Speaker, a year ago, I asked the Prime Minister why, under his new early release from prison scheme, dangerous criminals are being let out early against the express advice of probation officers. The Prime Minister promised me that it would be looked into, but it is still going on. One person released early under this scheme returned home and stabbed his girlfriend. He said, "I cannot believe they have let me out. I told them I would do it." Why hasn't the Prime Minister stopped this from happening?
Mr. Speaker, less than 1% of prisoners who have been released within 18 days of the due date of the release have been guilty of any further crimes. And so it is bad when any instance happens, but he has to accept that it is a very low proportion of those that have been released. We have also instructed prisons that they should now ensure that the police are notified in response to any information that they receive that a prisoner poses a risk of domestic violence. So since the incident that he is talking about, we have stepped up our checks, and these will continue to ensure that people are not released if they pose a risk of domestic violence.
But I warned the Prime Minister about this a year ago, and the fact is nothing was done. The head of the probation officers said on the radio, well, we brought it up last year, and as far as I can see, they've done nothing. Doesn't the Prime Minister realise how serious this is? Probation officers said this week there are at least 29 cases, and in every one, probation staff took the view the men weren't suitable for release. On the issue of domestic violence, which he raises, in 8 cases, men convicted of domestic violence who were released early went back and beat up their wives or their partners. How could this possibly be allowed to happen a year after the Prime Minister said he would stop it?
Mr. Speaker, I just explained how we've stepped up the checks in response to the National Association of Probation Officers, and I have to say to him that we are increasing the number of prison places. They've increased from 60,000 to 80,000 during the period of this government. They're going up to over 82,000 this year and will rise again to 86,000. So the idea that we are not taking action to deal with the bigger problem, and that is the provision of prison places, is wrong. We are taking the action that is necessary. And I have to remind them, during the last 10 years, there are 16,000 more police on the street. We have more community support officers, and at the same time, crime is down by 30%. And it would have helped, Mr. Speaker, if the opposition had voted for some of our measures. The opposition voted against our measures on gun crime to 5 years for holding a gun. They voted against our measures on DNA. They voted against measures on antisocial behaviour in the period that he was trying to hug hoodies.
No one will ever forget that he was the Chancellor of the Exchequer who didn't build the prisons that has landed us in this mess. It's absolutely no consolation to the people who are the victims of domestic violence that he reads out this list of completely irrelevant figures. And he says that they are stepping up the checks, but will he confirm there are no proper accommodation checks about where these people are going back to? There are no proper risk assessments. Isn't it the case that under his new early release scheme, people are released even though the probation officers don't know where they're going, haven't assessed them for risk, and they end up committing further crimes? A year ago, he told me in this House he would act. Surely people will conclude he's failed in his basic duty, which is keeping people safe.
Speaker, he is quite wrong. We increased the number of prison places over the last 10 years from 60,000 to 80,000. And that was a decision we made because we ran an economy that could deliver the resources to build the prison places. As for his questions about individual prisoners being released, any prisoner serving over 12 months who's released is subject to probation. As far as concerns about domestic violence are concerned, I've already told them that prisons have been instructed that they should now ensure that the police are notified in response to any information they receive about a prisoner who may pose a risk of domestic violence. So we have stepped up our checks, but he hasn't answered the point I made. We have acted against antisocial behaviour. We have acted against domestic violence. We have acted against so that evidence through DNA can be constructed. We have brought in CCTV. Most of these proposals have been opposed by the opposition. They talk tough on law and order and act soft. They talk tough on terrorism and act soft. They talk tough about the planning laws and last week voted against them. On all the major issues where difficult long-term decisions are made, they duck the big issues.